Welcome to episode 89.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Who Did That Voice, where we take an in-depth look at voiceovers.
Ready to take a vacay, but you just don't have the time to plan? Let the agents at 3D Travel Company pamper you and take care of all the little details. Find us at www.whodidthatvoice.co and click the Book Now button on the left-hand side. For a limited time, Who Did That Voice listeners can receive a Disney gift card for qualifying Disney and Universal trips, booked and traveled by 2017. Hurry and book today so you can travel away.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hey everyone, just wanted to let you know we have launched a Patreon page. You can find us at www.patreon.com/whodidthatvoice. What is Patreon, you say? Well, it's a lot like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign that allows you to help support us on a monthly basis. For as little as $1 a month, you can help support the show and earn amazing perks. Help us out today and join the Who Did That Voice family in a new way. Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest is the voice of Rogue from X-Men the Animated Series. This is by far my all-time favorite X-Men show in the animated world, and it is by far my favorite rendition of Rogue. I am super excited to be bringing you this interview just after we hit the 25th anniversary here this last Halloween here just a few days ago. So I hope you guys enjoy this interview with this in-depth look at Rogue from X-Men.
Was Diaz, the most beautiful woman in town, alone on a Saturday night?
I was reading about love and adventure, Gambit. What more could a gal want?
The real thing, Shell. Gambit at your service.
Even crazy swamp rats need a gal they can touch.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice. Today I am super excited to be bringing you an interview with Lenore Zann. Lenore, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome, Sugar. It's just great to be here.
Well, I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you on the show. I've been looking forward to this for an extremely long time, and I know life keeps you busy, but thank goodness we were able to finally work something out.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry it's taken so long, but I'm extremely active these days, so it's great to just slow down for a night and have a nice chat with you.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to it. I think we're going to have some fun tonight. Well, the very first thing we're going to dive into, Lenore, is who is Lenore Zann? Tell me about the little girl, Lenore, that grew up into the beautiful woman she is today, and how did you become an actress, and more specifically, a voice actress?
Wow, that is really deep for an interview about my cartoon characters and animation career, but well, let's put it this way. A lot of people who know my work may not know that I'm actually Australian.
Oh,
yep,
wow.
I'm one of those Australian actors that don't sound Australian, that can get rid of their accent and take on other accents. So when I was a little girl, I grew up in Sydney, Australia. And I used to go between my mom and dad's house in Sydney in the city and out into the countryside, into what they call the bush in Australia. And I lived there with my grandmother. So my first friends were actually Aboriginal kids, all the Aborigine kids that lived near my grandmother's house. And we used to run around and play make-believe games, and they'd teach me about the animals in the forest and all the green growing things. And my grandmother and their grandmother were really good friends, and they'd make up stories about the bush and the animals and stuff. So I feel really blessed that I was brought up in an environment like that, in particular because, it made me completely non-racist.
Yeah.
So my first friends were black, and I never thought anything of it, that people might think that, they're different from other people, or that some people look down at other people. And to be honest, when you kind of like fast forward to the X-Men series, it's interesting because a lot of people relate to our characters because we're considered mutants, we're considered different from everybody else, and we're considered less than, and they're trying to round us up and deport us and put us in jail and shut us up and shut us down. And so, I can really relate to my early days as a young kid and feeling like, hey, we're all the same, we are all equal. And I think that's just an interesting perspective that I never even really thought about until like this very moment. So,
wow.
Yeah, so that's where I started. And then we moved over to Canada when I was about 8. We sailed over on a ship. My mom and dad were teachers, and that particular year there was a shortage of teachers in Canada, and there were too many in Australia. And the Canadian government made a deal and offered Australian teachers who came to Canada really good money, and I don't even know what else. They probably paid for the trip. I don't really know. I was only 8.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I do remember, that it took about a month to sail over on a big ocean liner, and we went to other countries. We went to New Zealand and the Tongan Islands and Hawaii.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
And, yeah, it was really cool. Really,
Yeah.
and imagine like this little girl on this big ship. There were like big storms and things like that. I mean,
Big
it was
adventures.
a real adventure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And then we landed in Vancouver, and we checked out Vancouver, but then we got back on the ship and sailed down to San Francisco and also Los Angeles. So I got to see San Francisco in 1968. That was the summer of 1968 with the flower children and, like free love and everybody
Summer
with
of
their long
love.
hair. Oh, it was amazing.
Nice.
And,
Beautiful.
And I remember saying to my mother, boy, all these boys look like girls. They've all got long hair. And my mother said, yes, isn't it beautiful?
That's funny.
It was great. It was really great. So, that was my first image. And then we moved to LA, or not moved, but we sailed on to LA. And I remember that I really wanted to try pancakes because I'd seen pancakes but hadn't really had them before.
Oh, wow.
And I remember that, they came in this great big stack with like more than you could ever eat. And I was just amazed by that.
That is so cute. I love it.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then we got to go to Disneyland, and I got to go and see the Walt Disney Castle. And, when I was a kid growing up, Walt Disney World and Walt Disney on Sunday nights, I think it was like my favorite show. So I got to see that, and it was just magical. It was really amazing. I fell in love with, LA and San Francisco and the United States. But then we moved. We got a car. We rented a car, and then we drove through the Badlands, through Arizona, through the Grand Canyon. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And then on up into Canada, and then we drove all the way to the prairies, to Regina, Saskatchewan, where my dad had a job at the university there, and my mom was a teacher for a year. And we saw snow for the first time. Never seen snow before. Got my tongue stuck to a car door because it looked so pretty with all the little icicles and all the ice on the patterns. It made you want to just lick it. And then I got my tongue stuck to the car door.
What a story. That's funny.
Oh my God. My
Wow.
mother used to wear mini skirts at that point, and then she found out why teachers didn't wear mini skirts to school in the wintertime in Regina, because her legs turned blue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just wild. But we'd heard how beautiful Nova Scotia was, which is on the east coast of Canada. So then Mom and Dad thought, well, we're only over here for a few years. Let's check that out. So then they called a few places in Nova Scotia, and they were offered jobs right away here. And so then we drove all the way across Canada in a car with a little trailer, like one of those little square trailers with the thing that you crank it up, one of those little crank up trailers.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then we went all across, we went over the Rockies, we went to Banff and Jasper and through Quebec where everybody speaks French. And then we made our way on down to Nova Scotia. And we were only supposed to stay here for like a year, but my mom and dad are still here. Like, long story short, they never left. Yeah. So now I'm here. I'm back home again, where my mom and dad are, and where my sister is, and she's got 3 little kids that are now they're teenagers. But I decided after 33 years of roaming around the world and being a gypsy and a citizen of the world, it was time for me to come home and spend time with my family and just be close to them, because mom and dad are getting older, and I wanted to be around and be an auntie for my sister's kids.
Oh, that's such a beautiful story, Lenore. Thank you so much for diving into you as a little girl and as you've grown up. And that's just so wonderful. I feel like when we really get to know someone on a more personal level, it just makes the characters that we love them for that much more special, at least for me, and I know it just makes you feel like part of my family now, extended family, versus, just an actress that I have heard of,
Right. And it's kind of interesting, I think, when you get to know an actor, what makes them tick and what their background is. And then when you hear those stories and then you think about the characters they play, you can see shades of their background in the character. Like the fact that Rogue is she's constantly traveling around the world. When she gets kicked out of her dad's home, not that I ever did that. We have a very loving, close family. But, when she does decide to go roaming, she goes all over the world trying to find herself,
Yeah.
And I did that. I did that in my 20s. I started off in Canada, Toronto, going to school in Toronto, and then acting, and then I went to LA. I went all over Europe. I mean, I went throughout the United States, really, and right across Canada, and tried living and working in different cities, and just kept traveling all the time, trying to find myself, really, who was I? And so I find that that's a part of Rogue as well. She feels that way, and she feels very isolated and alone until she meets Professor X and really comes home to the Professor X's school for these gifted mutant kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for you, Lenore, you've talked a little bit about Rogue. What was it like getting to work on that 1992 series, X-Men? It was an amazing series that's become very iconic. It's very well known and still loved extremely. I think it's the best and most loved series that's ever been done for X-Men, in my opinion. And what was it like getting to be a part of that show with such a great cast?
Well, it's amazing. I mean, it's nothing short of amazing. I have a funny story about how I got the part.
Please tell us.
Because, well, I was doing movies and television and theater mainly.
Okay.
In Toronto and LA, and going back and forth and working in both places. And I got a part in a play that went to New York, and I was working there for a year. That play was a very interesting play too, called Unidentified Human Remains and the True Nature of Love.
Ooh.
And I did that. I did it for about 9 months in Chicago, and then we took it to New York off Broadway at the Orpheum Theater, and it was fabulous. I mean, I loved New York. And then I came home to Toronto, and my agent asked me to go and do an audition for this new animation series that they were casting for. And I hadn't really done animation before that. And to be honest, at the time, it didn't really mean much to me. I was really I was a serious actress. I was doing movies, television, theater, dramatic roles. And, I thought, well, cartoons are just, silly, funny little things. And I wasn't that keen on it. So I actually did not go. I kept skipping the auditions for whatever reason. I just didn't really, I wasn't that interested. I didn't go.
Yeah.
Finally, my agent called me. She said, Lenore, now, I want you to go to this final audition for this show, this animation show, because they have been looking all over Toronto. They cannot find the right actress to play this part. And the reason that they haven't been able to find the actress is because it's you. I know it's you. You please go like to the final callback. She said, because they're looking for this sexy, husky voice with a Southern accent.
Wow.
And I was playing those kind of roles on TV and film. Like those were the kind of roles I was playing already.
Yeah.
And she said, it's you. I know it's you. Just go, show up. I swear to God, you'll enjoy it, and it pays really well. I'm like, well, all right, I'll go. So I went to the callback, and it was the first time they'd seen me. And I walked into the booth and put the headphones on, and the producers were in Los Angeles. There was the guys from Saban Entertainment and from Fox, 20th Century Fox, and they were there in L.A., and so they were directing me. So they said, okay, have you got the sides there? And I said, yeah, I've got the paragraph there that, it was like a paragraph they wanted you to read.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, go. So I said, my daddy liked to kill himself when he found out I was a mutant. And I heard this kind of like shriek on the other end. They were like, oh my God. I said, keep going. I said, well, when I was 13, I had me a boyfriend till I kissed him. Poor boy went into a coma for 3 days. Got so if I touched anybody, it just drove the life right out of him. I don't know, Beast. You know everything. What makes us like the way we are anyway? And then I heard these guys going, holy fuck, don't let her leave. That's the one. That's Rogue. Don't let her out of there. Where the hell did she come from?
Wow.
And that was it. That was all I had to do. And the next thing I knew, they were like, yep, that we want her. We want to sign her up. And so I was an X-Men, and the rest is history.
Well, that is a fantastic story, Lenore, and I'm so glad to hear that from you firsthand. I have never heard that story, and she's always been an X-Men that really meant a lot to me. The way she was portrayed in the films was completely different from the animation that you did, and I was kind of sad to see her done in different ways, different lights, because the version that you guys portrayed back in '92 is what I base everything of X-Men. My world of X-Men was created by you and your cast. And so when I saw Rogue for the first time as you, she was beautiful. She was sassy. She could fly. She was just kick butt. She was awesome. And she just had such a strength about her. She was a powerful woman. I love that about her. She wasn't this weakling or, woe is me kind of a thing like we've seen in other versions. I loved it. She was just kick butt, awesome, beautiful, powerful, but don't mess with her because she'll kick your butt. So that's awesome. What a wonderful story.
Well, thank you, Sugar. I mean, she is the strongest woman in the universe, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. She's the strongest woman in the universe.
Yeah.
So, and when she mistakenly killed Ms. Marvel because she was talked into it by Mystique, her mother.
Yeah.
That's when she then took on Ms. Marvel's power too, and her ability to fly, as most people would know who know the story.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but then again, her greatest strength in a way is her tragic flaw. And part of the reason why I think the X-Men and our characters are so universally loved and people can relate to them is because they harken back to like the ancient Greek tragedies, where every character has, in a tragedy, they have a tragic flaw. Like in Achilles, like with the character Achilles, he had an Achilles heel. He had this one heel, and he was so strong and powerful, but yet when he got pierced through his heel by an arrow in the Trojan Wars, that killed him, which is why we call that today an Achilles heel. Now, oftentimes in these Greek tragedies, it is the person's strength or whatever that is also their greatest flaw or weakness.
Yes, very true.
So what I see as Rogue's tragic flaw is that when she is so strong that she can take on any other person's energy and strength and become stronger and stronger and stronger, and she does. But that also means, I mean, the flip side of that coin is she can never get really close and intimate with anybody because she knows that if she does, she will kill them.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the really sad thing about it.
Yeah, and which is why she's so lonely.
Yeah.
And why every time Gambit comes on to her and says, "Come on, sugar, come on, let's play a little bit. Why don't you kiss me and let's try it out?" She's like, "Yeah, you just stay away from me." You know, she's very, you know, she's very strong about that because she knows she has the boundaries. It is within her power to kill or to save somebody's life. And she has decided that she is not going to use her powers for evil or to hurt anybody ever again.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I admire her for that.
I do too. You know, I really do. And the chemistry that she and Gambit had was beautiful. And we've never gotten to see that on screen either because they never brought Gambit to the films and the other things they've done. So it's been kind of, there's been a lot of things lacking in my life because the animated series was so wonderfully done that I wish they had based the films more on the animated series, kind of like they did with Spider-Man and some of the others and stuff, which, you know, some of you X-Men did cross over into Spider-Man for a couple of episodes. And that was really, really special to see. But, you know, one of the things I love the entire series. Every episode is extremely amazing. But I think one of my favorite is the one where Rogue and Jubilee are putting the Christmas tree together and putting the star on top of the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful episode.
Well, I'll tell you, and one of my favorites is the Rogue's Tale.
Oh, yes. That's an excellent episode.
Your backstory, right?
I love getting the backstory on characters, especially Rogue, because they did her so well. And all of the characters were extremely fleshed out, but I really feel that Rogue got a lot of care and they did a wonderful job on her. But you voiced it and brought her to life. So
no, every time I got a script where it was like you got to reveal more of Rogue's background, I was so excited.
Yeah.
But to be honest, let's talk about the Jubilee character for a minute.
Yeah.
So you know that very first one, the Night of the Sentinels or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The very first episode where, you know, myself and Gambit and I think Wolverine and a couple of the others helped to sort of save Jubilee.
Yeah.
Right. And take her to the X Mansion. I think that when the makers of the film version decided on what they were going to do with Rogue, they made her basically more like Jubilee.
That makes sense. Yeah, I kind of see that. Yeah.
Right. So for me, the Rogue that they created for that is actually a combination of Jubilee and Rogue, because this is just my own, you know, thought.
Yeah, I'd never thought of it like that though. So
right, they wanted her to be young, and they wanted her to have like a younger crowd that could relate to her, because they're always looking at, you know, ages and who's going to relate to this character or that character, and you need to have the younger generation. And Jubilee was much younger than all the rest of us.
Yeah, she was.
And so I see shades of Jubilee in that the character of Rogue that's in the film.
Wow.
And I think they did that on purpose.
Yeah,
because
I never thought of that.
They didn't use like an adult Rogue. They used that sort of soft, young, scared, timid character who's still sort of finding herself.
Huh.
And instead of bringing her out as that fully fleshed, fully hipped, ready to kick ass character that Rogue was, you know, it's like if I could think of like a rock star that reminds me of her, it's the girl that sings, you know, my hips don't lie, I'm starting to feel it, boy. What's that girl's name? You know, one from Colombia.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but I'm blanking.
Yeah, me too. But, you know, I mean, she's just, So I missed that as well. I really
Yeah.
missed that as well. And even now that she's getting older and stuff, it's still not quite the same.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that same way. We're still lacking in something, and I think it's going to take a whole reboot for that franchise before we really get to see that. But I don't know when or if that'll happen because they've kind of done like
Yeah.
some time changing stuff that's kind of
Yeah.
made stuff make sense, I guess. But anyway,
Yeah, I suppose.
aside from that, I'd never really thought of them making Rogue more of a Jubilee character, but that kind of makes sense now that you say that, and makes it make more sense to me, even though I don't quite understand why they did it. But
Right.
that's a good thought. I really like that, Lenore. Well, besides X-Men, I really want to talk about some of your other works as well, such as Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, where you had a recurring role as Mikla back in 1993 when this show came out. And do you remember working on that show and the cast that you worked with on that? What was it like?
That one, I think I did that in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Yeah, with Sue. Sue. Oh my gosh, her last name is
Sue Blue?
escaping me, but Sue Blue. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
The director. I loved her. See, I met her first in Vancouver, I believe.
Okay.
I think she was directing some stuff in Vancouver, and then when I moved to LA, I decided to take some voice classes from her.
Oh, nice. She's a great coach.
And she's amazing. She's just amazing. And I had already done like the X-Men and a whole whack of other shows in Toronto, but I wanted to learn how to branch out and not just use my own regular voice and this particular tone, but be able to branch out and play other types of characters.
Yeah.
And I didn't know exactly how to do that yet. So she taught me how. So Sue taught me how. And after I worked with her for, like several weeks, and I think I took her courses like twice through because I just learned so much from her. She brought me in to audition for a few things, including Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and I got that one. And I just remember working with her. I just remember I loved working with her. And then she also
nice.
cast me in one called The Mummy.
Oh, yes.
In LA.
Where you played a Noxuna Moon.
Yeah, Anak Tsunami. Yes, and that one I remember.
Yeah. No,
Imhotep. You used to be so handsome.
I love that series, and it was based off of the movies that they had done, and
Right.
it was a great show. It was a really good show. It ran a little short, but it was good that you were actually able to be a part of that one as well, because that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, like I just had so much fun. And again, like Sue Blue was like, if anybody ever has a chance to work with her as a voice coach or take her classes, do so. She's just the best.
Well, she's a legend, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of working with Sue Blue and doing characters that are kind of not very typical of you because you're trying to branch out and be different, you played on a show called Outlaw Star as a character named Aisha Clan-Clan, I think is how it's pronounced. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah.
But it's an anime, and she's a cat-like immortal creature that becomes more powerful as she eats food, and she's really pretty, but she's very unique looking because of her cat-like features and stuff, and she's very much like you, but it took me a little bit to get it, and you really do use some versatility in your voice to where it's not just you or just Rogue or what we've heard before in other shows. What was it like for you getting to voice her, because I know she's pretty popular in the anime world?
Oh my God, that one was fun. Yeah, I did her in Los Angeles as well, and I think it was one of my first animes that I'd ever done.
Nice.
So and it's difficult to be lip syncing to those characters.
Yeah.
I find doing original cartoons much easier than doing the lip syncing stuff, but because you have to time it, you have to look at the way the lips are moving and make it sound like at the right timing, but also imagine what that character would sound like.
Yeah.
And she was a challenge because she shrieks a lot. She screams and she shrieks and she throws temper tantrums. She's like a spoiled little valley girl kind of thing, who's just like wants everything her own way, and when she doesn't get it, she blows up.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally as well as figuratively, right? Like she just blows up and becomes this huge, great, big, monstrous cat with big sort of jugs, and like just she's amazing.
Yeah.
And I love her because she's got this funny little snaggle tooth. She's got this one little funny snaggle tooth that just kind of hangs out over her lip.
Yeah.
And and she's got the braids, and she's just like, you can't say no to her. Like, she will find a way around you. And if one door closes, another door will open. She will claw it open. And I relate to her because of that.
Absolutely.
Tenacious. She is tenacious, and she will just go after whatever it is that she wants, and she won't let anything or anybody stop her. And I like her because of that.
And she's got some rogue-esqueness to her. She's got a little bit of that kick butt kind of thing too, but she's a little bit more so, I think, because she doesn't hold back.
Yeah, and
So.
she's crazy. I mean, she is a crazy cat. She will, she'll explode, and you don't know what she's gonna do. So, and she's a rogue in the sense that she's like an outlaw too. She's an outlaw. She's from the Qatari Empire, and she believes the Qatari Empire rules. So I have a poster with her on it, and it says the Qatari Empire rules. And I actually have that in my house, and I got another copy of it in my office.
Oh, that's
So if
awesome.
anybody ever gives me a hard time, all I have to do is point at that.
I love that. That is so awesome.
Yes. Like,
That is awesome,
like, go ahead, make my day.
I love that so much. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Talking about another animation you did that's a little bit more a different direction. It's more geared for younger audience, Rescue Heroes, where you played Windy Waters. And you got to work on that show with Norm Spencer. And, that was a great cast of people that you worked with as well. It's a great show. I watched it with my younger siblings and nephews and nieces. And what was it like getting to play on that show of the Rescue Heroes?
I loved that show because I really appreciated the fact that it was a children's show that was teaching children about how to get along with each other and how you need to work together as a team if you're going to survive, and also how to stay safe. So, so many cartoons for little kids and everything, they're kind of violent, and they're doing different things to each other, and they're being mean to each other. I really don't like that.
Yeah.
So that show was all about loving and caring and being compassionate and looking after one another. So for me, it was a pleasure and an honor to be on that show. Now, I did that show when I think I was still living in LA at the time. And I would fly in to Toronto to do it with everybody else. And so it was a great way as well for me to get back home and see all my friends and see the people like Norm Spencer, who was, of course, was Cyclops on X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a number of different friends who we've been in other shows, and we got to work together again. But I'll tell you, one of the first of all, I was going to say, it was fun to do as well because we got our own dolls. Like, we had dolls that when you pushed the button, our voice came out.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you remember that. You're probably too young.
I do remember those, actually.
Do you? My nephew, who's now 16, when he was 4, I flew home from LA to spend like Christmas with the family, and I had bought him a few of the dolls over the past little while, and I came home with the station, the Rescue Hero, the big station where they all. Yeah. I forget the name of it, but there were bells and whistles and lights and everything, and you pushed a button and this happened or that happened. Anyway, I bought him that, and I brought him the doll with my voice, and he was just blown away, right?
Yeah, I bet.
So like that was a very cool part of that show, having that merchandise and stuff that was had your own voice coming out. But one of the most moving things that has ever happened to me in my career as an actor or a voice actor was after 9/11, when I was living in New York, and I had left New York the day before 9/11, and I had flown to Montreal to visit a friend, and I was heading out west back to Los Angeles to do some stuff. But my plane got grounded in Montreal that day because of the attacks on the World Trade Center. We got grounded and told to leave the plane and take our stuff with us, or it would be confiscated. And I didn't know what was going on. Nobody knew what was going on until we got to the airport. And then that's when we saw on the TVs in the airport what was happening back in New York.
Yeah.
And, nobody could believe it. So I got grounded there in Montreal for about a week and unable to fly anywhere. And then when I finally got back to New York after my trip out west, a few months later, I went to Times Square, and there's a great big Toys R Us there.
Yeah, I've been there.
And I've been in, and it's a great store, like it had that big dinosaur. And it has, it's got everything.
Big
in
Ferris
there.
wheel, yeah.
Yeah, and I suddenly looked up, and there in front of the store was a huge, giant-sized Wendy Waters.
Wow.
In the New York firefighters outfit gear, standing there in Times Square. And I cried. I just was so moved by it. And so I went in the store, and I found out that they were selling the dolls with the New York firefighters garments on, first, like as a special memento to remember 9/11. And here's my character, Wendy Waters, a firefighter,
Oh, wow.
And I bought that doll, and that will always remain a very poignant and moving time in my life, and a memory, and that my connection to that tragedy that happened.
Wow, that's really unique. I did not know they had done that with Wendy, selling those and having the big statue. That's really amazing. I didn't know that. So thank you for sharing that about her.
Yeah. No, you're welcome. I think they might have had one other, like maybe Billy Blazes as well.
Yeah.
But I can't quite remember. It's a while back now, but I do remember just seeing my character standing there, like 16 feet, 20 feet, whatever, tall,
Good
right?
Lord. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad you shared that with me. There's always stories behind the scenes that sometimes I can't even prepare for, and I always enjoy those because it makes my show even more exciting for me when I get something that I'm not expecting. So.
Right. Good.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the other things I wanted to talk with you about today was you got to play on the Avengers United They Stand back in 1999 as a character we've never seen on the big screen yet, named Tigra. And what was it like getting to be an Avenger in another Marvel title?
Fun. It was really fun. She was somewhat similar to Rogue, and the same producers did the show. I think it was again Saban and Fox, and they tried to have another hit like they'd had with the X-Men.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it didn't fly like the X-Men had. It was the same kind of setup with the same kinds of heroes.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, like time had moved on, and maybe people were interested in other types of shows by then. I'm not really sure what happened.
Yeah.
But I know that, my character Tigra, again, she like the other character I got to do later on in my life, Aisha Clan-Clan, she turns into a tiger when she gets pissed off. So it's something about me and cats,
Yeah.
But,
Powerful creatures.
So yeah. But that was fun. That was fun to be able to do that and do that with your voice. And it's interesting because her boyfriend in that show was Hawkeye.
Oh, really?
Hawkeye.
Okay. I didn't remember
And
that.
she loved Hawkeye. And then suddenly Falcon shows up. And Falcon was played as a black character.
Mm-hmm.
And yet is he black in the shows where
Yes.
he's starting to show up right now? He
Yeah,
is.
he
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like there was an interest between Tigra and Hawkeye, and then Tigra and Falcon.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm almost half expecting Tigra to show up in one of these shows at
Well,
some point.
They keep expanding the universe, so it's bound to happen eventually because they keep bringing in new characters all the time as sideline characters for the main ones. And so, maybe they'll make a Falcon movie and she'll come into it. Maybe we'll see that,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
But that's
And
awesome.
Scarlet Witch was part of that.
Yes.
Our
Yeah.
Avengers as well, and now
Yeah.
she's a character.
Yes. She's played by one of the Olsen twin sisters.
All right.
Not the twins, Mary Kate and Ashley, but it's their sister that actually plays her part, which she's a beautiful young lady. So it's really cool to see her coming into the forefront in the media world today, because I haven't seen her in a whole lot of stuff. Maybe she's done other things, but that's the first role I've really noticed her in. It's amazing to see what the Avengers have done, the Marvel movies and everything. So
yeah. No, I mean Stanley is a genius. I mean, he's brilliant, and I've loved being part of that universe. I just wish that they would bring back the original X-Men and give us a whole bunch of new episodes to do.
That would be
because
epic.
I don't think their story is really ever going to be over. And in this, like when you look at what's going on in America today, the X-Men and the deep levels of what those stories are about are actually coming to fruition right now. Like it's almost like happening as we speak.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally understand.
And which is why I think again there's gonna be a new like so many more people interested in it, because there's so many more people who feel that they are being ostracized and shunned and shamed, and for standing up for what they believe in or just for being different.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny, the other thing about that, my character in the X-Men is I get a lot of fan mail, and a lot of the fan mail comes from young people who feel lost, who don't feel they fit in anywhere, who are either being bullied or they just feel like nobody understands them. And also, interestingly enough, soldiers who are overseas on ships, they must be watching them on Netflix or on something.
Yeah.
But I oftentimes will get letters from soldiers just saying how much they enjoy watching them. It takes their mind off, the fears of battle and what could happen. And also that they really relate to my character is interesting too. So I oftentimes write to them and basically end up saying, like, come home safe.
Yeah.
Come home safe. We're all heroes. We all have our own superhero inside of us. But, you don't even need to be a hero. Just come home safe. And I think that they appreciate that a lot.
Well, that's really special that you do that for all of those fans. I know they probably appreciate that immensely, for sure, Lenore.
Yeah, well, they feel alone, right? They feel alone, and they're scared, and they don't know what's going to happen, and they wish they were invincible.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I understand that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Lenore, there's a couple things I just want to make a quick note to. I know we need to kind of get towards wrapping up, but you played in My Little Pony as Star Catcher, I believe is the name, and that was in three different movies over the course of the 90s, I believe. And another show that was of note was Mega Man NT Warrior, where you played Roll and the sister of Mega Man. Those are some really great shows, and I would love to have you back on the show sometime so we can talk about more wonderful projects that you've worked on. But in closing, I just have a few quick questions for you. What kind of advice would you give to someone who listens to this interview, who's a fan of yours or X-Men or Rogue in general, especially? What kind of advice would you give to them if they're looking at getting into this world of acting, and more specifically trying to get into the niche of voiceover itself?
I think personally, as I said, taking classes is really important. you may have a natural voice, and people say to you, "Oh, you should be doing voiceovers. You got the best voice. You could be." But the thing, you really need to be able to recreate it on a constant basis, and that's not as easy as it seems. So, in order to hone your craft, because it really is the craft. If you go to like a very good voiceover teacher and then put a CD, DVD together of some characters, also some stuff like just selling regular things like commercial things like soap or Pepsi or, cars or beer or whatever, your voice takes on different tones. So you have to find, first of all, what makes your voice unique and different from anybody else's. And that will be very important. But then you also have to be able to change your voice and make it sound different ways for different products or for different characters. Softer, higher, lower. Age, does it have a lisp? Does it have a stutter? Does it have an accent? And you have to be very fluent and flexible with that, because people will throw things at you like, okay, that's good, but can you do it with an Irish accent?
Yeah.
Oh, that like things like that. Oh, that's good. Man, let's try Australian on this one. Or you just never know what they're going to come. Or sometimes you get something like, yeah, I don't know, that sounds a bit too green to me. Can you do it with more of a purple color to it? And you're kind of going, huh?
That's funny. Wow.
It's like, okay, right, sure. What have they been smoking today? But
wow.
But you have to always try and please them, right? So,
yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I say classes are very good. And also, watch the shows that you love. Try imitating people. Try different imitations, and try and come up with 6 or 7 to start with, different types of voices that you could pull out at a moment's notice, but also you could keep doing them for some time, as opposed to just like breaking your voice and start coughing or something like that.
Yeah. Something you can maintain and not wear yourself out on in 2 seconds. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
That is some really great advice, especially, give me a little bit more purple and less green. And you're like, okay. And then they're like, that's it. And you're like, okay, well, I know how to speak purple now.
Yeah, like, oh, good. I'm glad,
That's funny. Well, Lenore, it's been absolutely wonderful talking with you. I have one final question for you, and we will do a closeout. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
Oh, my gosh. I want to make the world a better place. I want to inspire people to have more compassion and love for one another in their lives, and to realize that we all have more things in common than we have differences.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's
if
beautiful.
we can all think about that and treat other people with love and kindness and respect, imagine what a beautiful world this will be.
I couldn't agree more, Lenore. I think that's very beautiful, and I love that legacy that you want to leave behind.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Sugar.
Well, Lenore, it has been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show today. Would you please do us the honor of closing out as Rogue from X-Men?
Well, sure, Sugar. In fact, when I first started this interview, you seemed about as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. But hey, I dig it. I love you. I love your show. And folks, you just keep on listening to Who Did That Voice. Bye for now.
Well, everyone, I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode with Lenore Zann, the voice of Rogue from X-Men the Animated Series. And if you did, please find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram by searching Who Did That Voice. I would love to hear from you. A question you might ask yourself is, where can I listen to Who Did That Voice? That's an excellent question. You can hear us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co. Click the Episodes tab and listen away. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us next time for our special guest, George Booza, the voice of Beast from X-Men the Animated Series. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they've voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.